Hello everyone, this is Kiro Show here. Now, when we last left off, Deku, he had to go to the hospital. Now then, after this had happened, he would be told that he should just head straight home and things should be fine. Now, after doing this, or they would be back in town, Deku, he would be thinking that he doesn't need to take the trains. He should just be fine going home by just walking. Uraka and Bakugo are actually with them. And this is whenever they would be walking and they're talking. They would pass by a gym. Now, this gym, the owner of it, she's actually tossing out pieces to an old robot. Now, this robot is actually called an ETM droid. Basically, when these robots were first introduced to the megacities, they were introduced to be quirk-proof, acid-resistant, transformation quirk resistant, and could actually battle with the types of All Might. But these robots, they didn't stay in commission for very long because they had malfunctions and were having cases of free will. But those got solved in later programming issues and problems, but they were still considered very risky because they could only give so much of a robot an understanding of things before it felt human and actually passed the Turing test. So, because of this is whenever they switch to human judges. Now, as the guy's throwing out the robot, he's throwing out the torso, he's throwing out the arms, and he's throwing out the legs. The Deku's kind of curious because he can hear that the robot's still active because of it's talking. Deku is asking the man why he's throwing out a perfectly good robot. The man would say that this droid, it's it's an old clunker and it's actually not very useful anymore because he just puts new pieces into it or he just repairs it. He repairs the wires to it and essentially always falls apart. Now he's asking what they mean, and he's explaining that this old droid was used for boxing matches and things like that, but now it's just useless. Now it's actually a version 1 droid, and the battles this man's talking about are robot battles with version 3 and 4s, if not around versions 7 and 8 by now. And he would say if those kids want it, they can have it, but don't blame me if you spend all night dragging it back. As Deku, he would pick up the torso to the droid, asking it if it would be fine if they just took him. The droid would respond that he doesn't have anything else to do here, so he doesn't really care. As Deku would pick up the torso to it along with his head, and Yurok would just tap on the limbs and just put him in her backpack. Now, Bakugo's thinking that he might be able to find a couple wrenches back at home that they can use to put him back together. Now, eventually they would get the droid put back together and they would get its limbs working, but it's still having some technical issues. Now then, ow. Because of this, Deku would ask All Might and every teacher if they could use the area back at UA to actually work on the droid. They would meet Mei Hatsume, and this is during that 2-week period where she'd actually help them improve, adapt, and rewire and remodel some of the systems, actually making it more functional and more effective. Now then, during those 2 weeks, not only was that happening, but UA was conducting an investigation against the villains, and they have discovered where their hideout is. Now then, they have been biding time effort and getting heroes along with weapons stockpiled. Nezu is asking All Might if he thinks that this is going to be enough to actually take down the villains. All Might would explain that he's not sure, but he doesn't want to do what he had to do last time. Or he might just have to finish. He's going to try and finish the job this time, since it didn't get done last time. Now then, Deku would immediately walk in and asking what's going on. A lot of students would have explained that essentially the heroes are planning on raiding the villain base. Now, after that would happen, Deku would then be told by All Might that they're going to raid the villain base and he needs him to come with him. And this is whenever Deku would explain that he kind of wants to come with him, but the last time, well, All Might would explain that they need to kill All for One, and that doing so might not be such a good task, because the last time he did this, he had to call upon Judge Death. And he went over his limit with Judge Death, trying to essentially bring Death along for the ride. But Deku's body actually withstood it longer than he had. So that means that he has a better control over One for All. Now, Deku would say that if that's the case, then why doesn't he just call upon Judge Death? Now, as soon as Deku said his name, Death would have appeared right in front of him, which would actually freak everyone out. Now, Deku, he's looking at Judge Death, confused. Death is saying that all he needs to do is just call his name and he shall appear. All Might's asking what he means, as he would explain that he not only has he been observing this boy, but he finds him miraculously interesting. Because not only did he feel like he should have died during the USJ, but he should have died against that villain. But he did not. So he will be offering his help or services if they need it. Because this is the first thing that has ever confused him in his entire existence. Now, Judge Death would then say that if the boy needs my power, all he simply has to do is ask, but he has a requirement. He told his comrades about what happened, and they would like to experience this as well. So if you call upon me, you will have to call upon all four of us. Which is when Deku would say that they all can't possess him at once, can they? This is whenever Judge Death would just say that sadly they cannot. But if they can provide 3 more vessels, we can essentially lend our power until your bodies cannot handle it. Basically, you guys will not be destroyed like All Might, but you will be immediately require medical attention. Now, after hearing that, Deku, he would say that he can ask people about it, but he will tell them the risk. And he would walk back into Class 1A, as All Might's confused, watching Judge Death try and actually swat a fly. Now, because of this, Deku would walk into Class 1A, and he would explain that he was told a simple way that he might be able to help All Might. And it is going to require 3 more volunteers. But before anyone can properly raise their hands, Deku would say, but there is an added risk. He would explain the entire situation to everyone, and this is whenever Deku would say he might have a good idea of who needs to be who. As he would point to Momo and say that Judge Fire, he doesn't like attention, but he is willing to take it if he needs it. So, He also wields a trident and many other varieties of weapons. Momo would say that she will volunteer if she needs to, but she still thinks this is kind of crazy. Deku would say that he is going to be the totem or embodiment of Judge Death, so that's another one, as he would look at Ibarra and say that Shiki needs to be Judge Morris. Ibarra would ask, what is Judge Morris? And he would say that he's essentially, he deals with people of greed and people of terror, but he also apparently has a garden and deals with nature. She would say that she agrees reluctantly, as Deku would then ask Bakugo if he would like to be Judge Fear. Bakugo would say that he does not agree with this. It's crazy. You cannot just simply walk in here and ask us to be possessed by the devil. You're speaking nonsense, Midoriya. As he would say that he knows, but this might be the only chance they have to defeat the villains. As it, he doesn't want anyone to die. As they would ask what he means. Deku would say that whenever he was possessed by Judge Death, he had a nightmare in that tank. The same one over and over again, which is where everyone in this room was massacred during the back in the USJ. People would then freeze in their tracks, realizing that Deku, he never told or shared this information with them. Bakugo would say that he does not agree to this, as Uraka would say that she'll do it then. Everyone would immediately look at her, and she's just saying that if she needs to, if it's to protect people and it requires her to essentially take on all fear, she will do it. As Deku would then call upon Judge Death. All four of the horsemen would arrive, and they would see their respective candidates. Now, after being told what will be needed for the possession, this is whenever they would be possessed, or they would then be tethered together. Which, as soon as that happens, Deku's face immediately twists back into the smile. Well, Momo, she's actually producing somewhat of. Well, she's producing some sparks, and she feels like her quirk is stronger. Ibarra, she would immediately just be coated in a green substance surrounding her entire skin. And this is whenever Uraka, she would be confused as she is wearing a helmet, or her hair has turned into the form of bat wings. As she would then try to stand up, as soon as she touches her desk, everyone would feel the entire just room they're sitting in just force themselves down. As she would immediately tap to release. Now, the judges are telling them not to overdo it because they're only using less than 10% of their power. Essentially, this is where you can settle at without actually putting any actual strain in your body. But as soon as you enter combat, we will release the full brunt of our power, giving each of you 10 minutes to fight with no restraint, no draws, no quorums about anything. Now, Deku would walk over to Uraka, and she's looking at him and looking at that twisted smile. She's telling him she never thought it would come to this, as we cut to later that night. Now, that was way too long. Well, guess this video is being 30 minutes long. Now then, This is whenever Deku, he's looking at all this, and All Might is with them. Every other hero is actually surrounding the... Well, they're outside the perimeter, which they were told to be around, which is essentially 100 feet away from the entire area Uraka is in. Now, Deku, he's actually over. Well, he's with her, along with Ibara and Momo, which is whenever she would walk into the villain's base, the villains would look at her and they would be confused, and as Deku would immediately walk in with her, this is whenever everyone realized that they know what's going on, as Uraka would immediately just have her face twist in fear, as everyone will begin screaming, and silence. There's nothing there. Now, the base would immediately explode, as Deku and Uraka would come walking out. The only survivors. Now then, this is whenever Deku, he would tell the ETM droid that they now need to head over to the other area, since that no doubt got his attention. He would immediately pick all them up and he would begin boosting up into the air, actually flying through the air. Now then, because of this, Deku's asking the droid why he can fly. The droid would state that before he was recommissioned and actually repurposed, he was actually fighting on the front lines. But he doesn't remember much after that because his memory is corrupted. He just remembers a large explosion and then being in a junkyard. That is where that one man found him, and he put him back together until he threw him out. Now, Deku's confused by this, as he would immediately begin feeling a strain in his face. Now, he would immediately begin bleeding from one of his eyes, which is whenever he would wipe it away and see it. Now, Deku's asking Fear what that means, or Death what that means. Death would say that essentially they have 8 minutes now, because even though you're using our lowest power, your body is still fighting us like a virus. And you will either succumb and we will kill you and actually have mortal forms again, or you will die. And you will die, or you will essentially pass out and actually be in the case where you will be very close to death. Now then, they would arrive. All Might would have immediately just gotten into the fight with All For One, and Uraka would have actually dropped to her knees, actually coughing up quite a bit of blood, being told that she is out of the battle. Now, why am I bringing her out of the battle immediately? She doesn't train her physical body very well, so she's not used to the strain of this much being put on her. And the robot actually flying took about... All Might cover that distance. Yeah, let's say it took about 2 minutes to fly there. But going back down, after essentially suppressing yourself to that point again, is not very good, and Uraka doesn't really know how to do it well for Fear. Because you essentially have to be fearless, which is hard for her to do after an encounter with Muscular with Midoriya. Now, she would have immediately been taken away by the Pro Heroes and put in a Bacthus tank, which is essentially a healing chamber. Now then, or healing, basically like being submerged in jelly, but it's water. Now then, this is whenever the battle would commence, as Momo would immediately go to create a sword or a spear, she would create a trident, actually confused. And the trident would immediately start catching flame and just turn bright red. As it is long, it is double-sided, and it is actually detachable. She is confused because this is not what she thought of. This is whenever Judge Fire would explain that this is what he thought of. Now, after that, Deku and Ibarra would immediately confront All For One. All For One is saying that they really are desperate if they made a deal with death just to fight him. Now then, because of this, Deku would immediately say that it doesn't matter because he is going to win, as he would immediately be empowering up One For All, and his entire body would just explode with power, which is actually confusing him. Now then, this is whenever Deku, he would just begin moving his arms around, saying that they actually feel a bit weird, as Judge Death is saying that he doesn't need to worry. Now then, Deku would begin charging at All For One, and as soon as he throws the first punch, All For One would actually be sent flying backwards. Now, Deku would then ask what that was, as he would say that not only has he boosted their physical, well, not only have they essentially elevated their physical bodies for a short amount of time to actually use their power, they have actually boosted their quirks. Which basically means instead of throwing 100%, Deku's basically throwing 1,000%. So, Deku would then start charging at him, and he's actually just throwing punches, and he would be punching him around, and Momo would have actually taken his time to actually stab All For One through the back, and just start unleashing fire at him. As Ibarra is actually getting close to All For One, and she would just grab him by his arms, rip them off, and just make them rot. They're essentially just pulling apart All For One over and over again until Deku's holding All For One by his head. Now, as soon as Deku's holding All For One by his head, this is whenever he's telling All For One that they are here to judge him. Which is when Ibarra and Momo would immediately fall to the ground, actually coughing up blood. And it's getting very bad because you can see the strain on their bodies as soon as they drop. Because they're not on their hands and knees, they're just on the ground, just coughing very loudly. It is hard to watch. Everyone in the world is watching this battle as Deku, he's holding All For One in his head and he just starts squeezing down slowly. All you hear is All For One screaming and begging All Might to save him from this monster. This is whenever Deku would simply say that now you're begging the man you threatened to kill to save you. You think that you are surrounded by allies, but really, I'm just surrounded by fear and a dead man. Pieces of a dead man. It's very hard to see what you find. So feeble and Now, as soon as Deku would have said that, he would immediately drop down to his knees, as he would just feel his body instantly get weaker. Now, Deku's on his knees, and this is whenever the ETM droid would have actually charged in and actually tried helping to protect Deku. Which is whenever he would start unloading power or missiles and actual bullets into All For One, as Deku is actually being dragged away from the battle. Now, All For One is actually regenerating as fast as he can over and over again, and he's not even focusing on his cracked skull anymore, which is whenever All Might would have arrived and thrown a 1,000,000% smash, or, Deku would have actually stopped the droid, as he would have immediately just tried going back into the fight, as he's barely able to stand, and he would immediately just light All For One on fire with his pyrokinesis. And he would immediately charge at All For One, as he just can't even stand up. All For One's on the ground burning as Deku. He's looking around and he's trying to use One For All, but his body won't let him because of the strain. It might kill him. And this is whenever Deku, he's looking around, he's trying to find something, and he would just find a cinder block. Now, he immediately walks over to pick it up, as he would then walk over to All For One and just start bashing his head in with it over and over again. Now, as soon as he goes down over and over again to kill him, his arms feel weak. He's not even holding the cinder block anymore. It's too heavy for him, so whenever he immediately just came back with his arms, he would have let it go behind him and just start coming down with his hands. And he's bleeding. He's on the verge of death, which is whenever All Might would have immediately just pulled Deku away from All For One, telling him that he did it, he judged him, he's dead. So, you need to get into a tank right now. As Deku would be submerged in a tank, and they would be taken back to UA. Now then, the villains are dead. All Might, he feels like it's time he needs to retire. So, this is whenever he would take off his badge, and he would write down every single thing he has that might be of use to Midoriya. As he would then take the law to the lawless. He would be given a bike. He would be given food. He would be given ammunition. And he would be told that he can only stay out there no, let's not do that. I was gonna make All Might essentially drive into the wasteland and end it there. I really wanted to, but that would not be a fitting end. All Might, he would have actually gotten a desk job at UA. A proper job this time, as a teacher, to actually teach Midoriya, like in canon. Because I really don't want to kill off All Might by just sending him into a wasteland without his power. Now, I'm going to be ending this here, guys, because that was way too long already. So I will be covering the Big 3 fight and everything else in the next video. Catch you guys later.